So hello, everybody. You are at Bee Talks. I'm Bill Hesbach, the president of Connecticut Beekeepers Association. And so I'm going to start off this evening by telling you a few things about our upcoming events. There's no reason for a bloom calendar from my perspective where I am, but maybe some of you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing your bees bring back. I did see some really deep orange pollen today, which I'm guessing is Shasta daisy or something like that from a nursery somewhere around. But for practical foraging purposes, there is no longer anything out there for bees that I can see. There's no knotweed in my area has gone by and dried up. That's not the same for every place in the state. I was in Litchfield yesterday, and the knotweed is blooming up there still, but not where I am, and maybe not where you are. I don't know. Goldenrod died a sudden death. It was really going real strong there for a while and just petered out. So what's left in my area, just the aster, white wood aster and blue wood aster, or purple wood aster, however you want to, whatever you want. It's a beautiful little flower, but if you're depending on it for anything other than clogging up your colonies and crystallizing your honey in your supers, that's the only thing it'll do at this time of year. So if that's the only thing you have left, make sure you get your supers in. And if you bring your supers in, if you haven't done that yet, and you bring them in, you're going to end up having to feed, I think, because we ended up with that. I'm not sure if the nectar flow turned off during that rain moisture dearth in September, but it may have. And so I didn't come in. My bees didn't collect anything after the little beginning part of September. They weren't really doing that well. There was some goldenrod knotweed around, and I think they were sustaining themselves, but they didn't really do anything great. Now, does anybody have anything else to talk about in terms of blooms? So what I'm essentially saying is, from my area, foraging is over. There will be nothing significant coming into the house. And when foraging ends, unfortunately, what begins is robbing. All right. So, that's what's going to happen. All right. Bees are going to start robbing, and you'll notice that when you try to go into your colonies and open them up. And if you do anything, if you have lots of colonies in a given area, or if you even have 2 or 3, you'll find that there's other bees in that area will take interest in your colonies during this time of year because of robbing. If it's a little bit weaker, bees will rob it up. There's still some smartweed around. Now, smartweed is a little plant that you may not be familiar with, but it blooms. It's still blooming. It is such a minor contributor, and bees would be really forced into actually foraging on that, but they will. I mean, it does give something. What else is there around? Some of the ornamentals are still blooming. I have some varieties in my yard that are still attracting bumblebees. I'm not seeing any honeybees on them at all. Cool.
I have zinnias that are in full bloom, and
zinnias, yes. Okay.
mealy sage,
All right.
and I still have touch-me-nots in blooming.
Yes. Okay. So that's great. I mean, so those are they could be a sustainer bloom, actually. Jewelweed or touch-me-not or whatever you want to call it can be a sustainer bloom. If there's a lot of it, it'll help your colony at least. And it might be that my bees are finding some of that stuff in little stands somewhere, but as for a major flow, there's nothing around. All right, you're at Bee Talks. Then there's a winterization workshop on the 19th, which is not this Saturday, of course, but next Saturday. And we have a lot to talk about at that workshop because we have been harassed by small hive beetles like crazy. And I want to show you some of the results of the fact that we had to spend a disproportionate amount of time trying to trap beetles this year, and also how we're going to go into the winter with some singles and some doubles, and we'll check on stores and things like that. And we'll also look at how we are going to try to manage to winter over the transparent hive. And then we have Erica Shelley coming on in October also. She's going to be talking about beekeeping for the future. So that should be a really interesting talk. And then we have Bee Talks again in November. And then in November and December, we have interesting speakers. We have two really heavy hitters here coming up. One in, Garrett Slater, of course, will be an interesting talk on drones. I heard him do it 2 or 3 times. It's fabulous. And then Tom Seeley's on 5 Wondrous Behaviors. That's what we asked him to speak about. And then a favorite of mine, Susan Colby, who's done so much with queen rearing. She's the person who's responsible for the New World Carniolan. So she's going to kick us off in February. And if you'll notice, there's really nothing in January on the calendar because that's when our bee school is going to be. So our bee school, we'll start advertising for our bee school very soon. And it will go from the 2nd week in January to the 1st week in February. So it'll be 4 Saturdays. So that's what we got planned there. All right, so I'm going to go to my email now, and I want to show you something that DEP sent along, and maybe some of you have this. Let me share this screen. And what they've sent out here is a little bit of a warning, in my opinion. But you can see, you can read it for yourself. In the recent years, they go on and they make it seem like they're trying to be informative, and maybe they are. And so they give us the label as the law thing. Now, we all know this, and so I'll just reinforce it. You can't apply anything to your colonies in a manner that's not consistent with the label. So we should all know that, right? What you may not have known is that you can get it penalized for that for up to $2,500 a day for each violation. That if you use pesticide in a manner that's inconsistent with the labeling. All right, so that's the threat. And then they gave us a list of products that are legal. Anything else that you put on your colony in Connecticut is illegal. Apibioxol, we know, is the only legal oxalic acid that you can use for varroa mites, as an oxalic acid. In other words, you can't use wood bleach from the hardware store and all that. Apivar, neurotoxin, but it is legal for varroa mites in Connecticut. We have no idea what the efficacy is at this point. We are seeing a downturn in the efficacy in some parts of the country with Apivar. There are some studies that are to the contrary, but my guess is Apivar will eventually will become a resistant formula for Varroa. A B402 is a larvicide for wax moth, which you may not be aware of. It was only available out of Canada. I haven't looked to find it, but this is something that you spread on your comb. It's called a larvicide, so it's a bacillus of some kind, and then the wax moth larva will chew the wax and die.
Remember me? I'm Paula. I'm the new bee inspector.
No, I totally do remember you.
Yeah.
Oh, so were you behind any of this? Then we could ask.
I was not behind any of it, so I wanted to say that. Amaflex is that RUP is a registered use product, so you have to be certified.
You have to be a veterinarian or something?
Well, you have to be a certified pesticide applicator. You have to get
okay.
What is
Amatraz.
It's just Amatraz?
The flash?
Yeah, but it's that fast acting. They've advertised it in ABJ a little bit.
Okay.
It's
All
a flash application of Amatraz.
And I did see that. Yeah, it's a fast acting. So they did send this letter to me, Deep did, and they said, hey, we're going to send this out, please read through it, which I did. But it was not from me. I didn't initiate it. It's not.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I was going to blame you for it.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So good thing that you're here to defend yourself, because I was going to, but I mean, I really wish you would have taken Apistan and Checkmite off of it. Why would you let that go through?
But they are legal to use, so.
So it was, yeah, I mean, what does that mean? We should use them?
No, it doesn't mean you should use them. It just
But
means.
you could send this to beekeepers and misinform them by telling them that these are two very toxic lipophilic compounds that we do not want in any colony in any way, shape, or form, but there they are.
Yeah,
All right, so anyway, so there they are. So let me reiterate that for the attendance of this call. I don't think you should use Apistan or Checkmate ever. And I think I'm getting a verification from Paula on that.
yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. All right, just so you know. And then the rest of them, and I don't know if you can buy B402 around here. You can. It's as I said, it's just a larvicide for wax moth, which is the least of our problem at this point. Easy Ox, some people are confused about this product, but all they did was repackage the 2-dose portions of oxalic acid so you can use them in your vaporizer without having to measure. I think that's basically what it is. But if
They
you
actually have, they have two forms, the powder and
Yeah.
the tablets that are 1 gram each.
yeah,
And the good thing about them is if you're concerned about actually following the label, they actually applied and got a label for double the dose that apabioxal has. So apabioxal, I think is maximum was 1 gram per deep.
yeah,
The other one is 2 grams per deep. So
it's
that's
2 grams per deep.
I know I can't remember the numbers right now, but
Yeah. Well, okay, so but what I'm trying to say is it's really just a product it's a convenience product for oxalic acid. That's all.
And it's another source of oxalic acid.
Oh,
that's
yeah, okay,
legal
yeah.
to use
Yeah.
for for bee treatments. So
Yeah, I'm guessing
that's
it's,
the benefit of it compared to apabioxal. That's all.
oh, okay. So I'm not clear about that benefit, but I get what you're saying. Oxalic acid is you could buy apabioxal and measure it yourself. It's very, very easy. And if you're going to pay extra money to have it dosed for you, then I don't think it's, in the interest of being frugal about Varroa treatments, you can just measure it yourself, and
I
it works.
think their prices were pretty good too, by the way,
Yeah.
that Easy Ox.
HopGuard 3 beta acid project, I've had some limited success with that. I think it works better in smaller colonies. It is by the way, you can look at this, the rest of this links on here tell you if you can use these when you have honey supers on or not, and that's good information. VarroxSan is our new treatment. I'm beginning to use that now. So I have it in about 20 colonies. It's interesting. I've got drop boards under them and and mites are falling on those drop boards at higher numbers than they would for natural falls. So I'm going to guess that it's working. The only problem I see with strips of any kind, HopGuard, VarroxSan, Apivar, any of them, if they cover any part of a frame that has pollen in it, either raw pollen or bee bread, and you have hive beetles in that colony, they'll scoot under that strip and lay eggs in the pollen under there where the bees can't get them. And they'll larvate on you right away. And now, so what the VarroxSan strips have done for me with a hive beetle population in a dozen or more hives that I have, a serious one that I've never had before, is that they've actually, after I got all of the colonies under control, the strips gave them a new leash on life, so they started to reproduce again. So just be aware of that if you're dealing with
How
small hive
did you
beetles.
treat the beetles?
I treated them, well, I trapped them with oil traps.
The
Yeah.
mineral oil?
Yeah, so I found that that if you use, there's a couple different kinds. I didn't use but there's beetle blasters. I didn't use those. I used the kind that slip down between the frames and have these little plastic arms that go over the top bar of the frame next to it. And the reason I'm using those is they're below the surface. There's no place for small hive beetles to hide under those. The beetle blasters, which is the black beetle trap. Somebody might want to put that up later on and we'll take a look at it. the beetles get underneath that little ledge and hide. So they can, even though they're being chased around by bees, they can find a place to stay under that beetle blaster. They cannot find it with that other trap. And I've had great success with that. This time of year, I'm getting the small hive beetle. There's a couple different ones. And the small hive beetle is significantly different in size. So there's like two size beetles floating around in the colony during the year. One's really small, one's kind of larger. And so I'm getting a lot of the small ones. I put a trap in one of the colonies. Yes, they were my VarroxSan sort of stimulated. So that's the problem with strips and beetles. So just be aware of that. And also, if you have screen bottoms at this point, if you're dealing with small hive beetles at all, slip in something in there, a sticky board, a tray, something that can keep the larva off the ground. In my case, I have trays that float underneath actually they seal the screen bottom. They don't allow anything in or out, and they're deep. They're about an inch deep. And so the larvae are falling through the frames, through the screen bottoms and onto that little tray where I'm putting a sticky board also. So to take a look at things. So what's good about that technique I'm using is it's a diagnostic tool also. So if you're not sure, if you have something that will catch larvae that are dropping through your screen bottom, you'll know you have a active reproducing infestation of small hive beetle. Apicard, I think we all know what that is. That's a thymol treatment. And then Formic Pro takes a little bit more time. I think the new substrate that the formic acid sublimates from is a little bit stiffer. There's not as much odor when you open a Formic Pro pack, and it takes longer to stiffen up inside the colony. So it's a different modality. Another Apistan strip down there that I put in the category of the other two, and then mitithol, which is a tracheal mite treatment, which you might keep in the back of your head because, so that we're seeing some tracheal mite. Other parts of the country are seeing more, I think, than we have. But I know that when, and maybe Paula will be able to verify this, that she sees some tracheal mite in her inspections next year, or maybe this year. I haven't seen any. I've brought some back into my lab and did some microscopy on them, and I haven't found anything, under the tracheal collar in regular bees that I've been looking at. But here it's out there, and that's a treatment for tracheal mites. And hopefully, if you're using a formic acid formula as one of your treatments that you're stepping through during the year, then it'll take care of your tracheal mites.
Or Apicard. Apicard will also.
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah, Apicard. So well, I think the homemade version of that used to be a thymol product in something, right? They used to put on the bottom of the boards. All right, so while I got you here, Paul, let me just ask you one more question. Over here on the penalties piece of it, who's the administrator of that?
Good question. I don't know. It's not me.
Okay, you're not going to come out with and then we're going to have to write you a check?
No, definitely not. I wanted to come on here to re-emphasize, because sometimes people think of me sort of as like the bee police, and that is not at all my role. My role is to help beekeepers and help you keep your hives healthy, not any kind of penalty.
Okay, so, well, listen, Paula, while we have you on here, do you have anything you want to say, or?
No, I just thought it might be nice to come on and show my face again, tell people that the renewal letters went out on September 10th. So if you haven't registered, like in the last month or two, you're lapsed. Because if you registered like mid-August or something like that, or anytime in September, then you're registered. But if you didn't register in that time, the registrations expired September 30th. And,
Okay. All right, okay.
but I did put my email in there so people can send me an email and I can resend your renewal letter because it is a lot easier if you have that fast track link
Yeah,
to renew.
was everybody that was registered?
Well, I would imagine that it is.
Yeah, how else
yeah.
would they, how else would they send it out, you know?
Yeah.
So, what questions do we have? Any questions about this, registered for use, the products registered for use in Connecticut? Anything on this, folks?
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
Colleen here. You didn't, I don't think you mentioned check mite. I've heard a few things about check mite and it gets the beetles and the Varroa mite and it has a cross next to it. I don't know what that means. And my other thing was mite away.
Check mite plus, that is.
Mite away quick strips. I see over in the messages, somebody said that they're gonna discontinue those. I never used them and I wanted to. And then the manufacturer said that it's gonna discontinue them.
I haven't heard that, but I've heard,
Maureen did.
haven't heard it from the manufacturer.
Okay.
So, but I have heard that from, other folks saying that they're thinking about, not keeping that product.
Well, that's sad because I use Formic Pro. I don't like it. I lost my queen last year to it and I used it this year because I'm having so much trouble with mites. But I wanted to try the quick check mite and mite away quick strips
Yeah,
this year.
I would really want to discourage you from ever putting, check mite in your colony.
Really?
Yes, well, I
No.
think I said, I obviously wasn't clear about that.
Okay.
So for Apistan or any Apistan product, and checkmite has been the bane of our existence from polluting our wax supply in the United States.
Okay.
All of them are based, have a lipid base or oil base, and that is what your wax soaks up. And those, they go on to form metabolites, and it is the reason why our wax is polluted with toxic chemicals that we don't really know what synergistic effects they have in our colony. But most beekeepers that I know in the backyard arena have stopped using those a long time ago. Commercial people will still use them. And it's a good idea, and maybe Paula will help me with this, but there's a good idea that you find your way through some different products as the season goes on. You might, if you're going to install, say, packages early in the spring, you might try HopGuard on them. It works really well with a new package, and because it's not a big population of bees, it gets on a lot of bees right away. And then you have VarroxSan, which I think VarroxSan, which is a 52-day product now.
The other question about VarroxSan, I don't know if this is the right moment to ask it, but there's also some very strange wording about you have to have, so you'd have to have, let's say you have 2 deeps and a honey on top, a honey shallow on top.
Yeah.
You can use the VarroxSan in the bottom deep, but then you have to have a deep with no VarroxSan in it, and then you can have your honey. It's something like that, and it's
yeah, no,
does that sound right?
That's the other problem with the label.
Oh
The problem
man,
with the label is that you need a separation between the wherever brood box you have your VarroxSan in and your super by one box. They're not saying whether or not it's a deep or another medium, but yeah, and I don't understand that.
it's not clear at all.
That's another question I asked. I don't understand why that would have to be a, if oxalic acid is legal to use with supers, why would the product VarroxSan need a separation between the product and the super? Don't get it. So that's another mystery in it. All right. So those are the two things we have to work out. Otherwise, I'm finding that it is killing mites. All right. So it does. I think it's going to work. I really do. I have however many days left on my my VarroxSan treatment. I still have 40 days to go. But we'll see what it does. Like, so I have drop boards under those, and I'll keep that drop board under there for as long as I can. There's not much action in the colonies these days, so you can keep a drop board under for a longer period of time, and you don't get as much detritus on it. and you can see the mite count just building and building and building. And on the second day, I saw a decent drop out of every colony. Go on the CBA site, look at the document I put together that will carry you through the season in terms of treatments, and it'll explain rotating your treatments through the year. There's times when you can use HopGuard, there's times when you can use some kind of Apiguard, and then there's time for formic acid. I mean, between those three, you should be able to get get through the season and have really decent control of mites, and know that you're not using one miticide exclusively and thinking you're taking care of everything. We don't want to risk some kind of resistance developing, even though there's, I think, now 25 years of history behind them in Europe. We had a problem with wax moths on one colony. That means that basically it's probably a weaker colony. Wax moths are pretty much not a pest that we think too much about these days. So we know that if we have a strong colony, it'll keep wax moths in check. Where wax moths become a problem is when you take your equipment off and you try to store it somewhere. If you don't do that properly, you'll get wax moths in that equipment and room good comb on you. So my suggestion is, if you're going to do long-term storage on any kind of wax foundation that you want to save or use, the first step for you is to subject it to some freezing temperatures. And what the comb honey producers talk about is 72 hours. But we know from our anecdotal experience with it as beekeepers that 48 hours or even 24 is enough. If you get that comb down to freezing, you've killed all the wax moth eggs, and that's what you're trying to do. And at that point, you can then store that box safely. So, but what I would suggest you do, first of all, is put it in the container that before you freeze it, you put it in the container that you're going to keep it in, and you freeze it all at once, the container and the frames, and you keep them in that after you take it out. All right, so Better Bee is carrying B402, the larvicide. Thanks, Jean. And Certain is also available, she says, from Better Bee. So good, that's great. From Data, yeah, wonderful. Do the containers you store frames in need to be airtight? Well, so what you're trying to do is kill the eggs, and then you're done with egg killing, and then you will not get another wax moth in there, even if you put a zip tie behind, in front on a, like, say a very high mill black garbage bag or something like that. They also have frame carriers you can buy. If you've only got a couple hives and you only want to save 2 or 3 supers or 4 supers that you're making honey in, you can buy the very expensive devices that will hang frames in them, and they stores them nice and neat, and then you can freeze them in that, and you'll have them. Those are airtight. I think they're airtight. They're close enough so no moth will get in it. But regular garbage bags will do the same thing. But what you can't do is when you put frames in a garbage bag, or if you put them in loose or something like that, and you're going to freeze them, you have to remember that wax gets really, really hard and brittle when it's frozen and there's no bee activity on that frame. So you have to handle them very carefully when you're taking them out of your freezer, so you don't, they'll just break apart like glass. So you have to be very careful. However you do that, make sure you're careful when you freeze them and take them out again.
I was in one of my hives on Sunday, and it was noticeably, compared to the others, did not have any new brood, or I couldn't find eggs, and just a tiny bit of older brood. So would it be? I couldn't find the queen. They don't act queenless, but would it be that the queen stopped laying this early?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You think so? Okay.
Oh, well, it could be that the queen stopped laying. Yeah, there's no, so remember, so you're in there and that's your observation. You're not seeing eggs, and there's no brood, you said? None?
Just a tiny bit of
But
cat
it's,
brood.
yeah,
Yeah.
cat brood. So there's a little bit of cat brood, but not much more than a little bit, and you're not seeing any eggs.
No, correct.
Yeah, all right. So you have more than one colony?
I have Yeah, I have 4. And the other ones I was in 2 weeks ago. I didn't get to go into all of them this weekend,
Mhm.
but the other ones had quite a bit of brood still.
Yeah, I mean, and
And
that would,
I mean, I saw eggs, I saw
Mm.
larvae in different stages, and so that's why I was surprised on this one not to see anything.
yeah. All right, so you're gonna just do something that's almost foolproof to figure out if that colony has a queen. It is foolproof to find out if that colony has a queen or not. Next chance you get, and do it soon because you know you can run out of time with a queenless colony. Get in there and get a frame of brood from one of your good colonies that has eggs. Very important that it has eggs because they'll either draw out emergency cells from those eggs or from very early larvae. But eggs are a guarantee that you're going to get them to draw out emergency cells. So take that frame from that good colony. Make sure there's no disease in that colony at all. You know,
Mhm.
look it over really thoroughly, and then put that frame in that suspected queenless colony, and in 24 hours, even in less time than that, they will start to draw out emergency cells if there's no queen in that colony. Even this at this late date, they'll make an
Yeah.
attempt to make a queen.
Hey,
And
Bill,
then I got to get on it and requeen it.
Well, then you got to
another
figure out what you want to do with it.
Yeah,
another observation, and tell me if I'm wrong,
Go ahead, Kurt.
but what I've seen is when the bees get low on resources, they'll cannibalize brood.
Yes.
And if you put a frame like that in there, they'll just cannibalize it.
Well, I mean, you know,
Well, I'm just saying, try feeding 1-to-1. 1-to-1 will stimulate.
well, you can
Yeah.
try feeding 1-to-1. You can, but you're really not gonna, you know, if the queen's not gonna lay this time, if there's something wrong with her or she's gone, you won't be able to tell. Now,
I run 8 frames, and I had 8 full heavy frames of food in there.
okay, so they've got plenty of stores.
They've got a lot of stores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kurt was talking about the protein side of things. Was there pollen in there?
Yes, there was
Yeah,
pollen.
all right. So they're covered under both their carbohydrate and their pollen needs. So there's a chance that there's more than a good chance that that will work than if you put a frame in there and they got pollen sources. There's no reason for them to cannibalize brood unless they don't have any pollen coming in.
Okay.
So,
All right. I'll
okay,
give that a shot. Okay.
try
thank
that
you.
and see what happens. Let us know.
It is too late in the season though to let them
So what
raise
you're
a
going to do
queen.
is you're going to combine that colony with another brood, with another colony. If you're, it's got a large population of bees?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All four of my hives are a large population.
Yeah. But, well, you know, so you got to figure out what you want. Yeah, it's too late to requeen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My opinion is too late to requeen.
Is it possible to, no, I guess that would be hard to do, right? Combine with a couple different colonies?
No, you could do that.
Yeah.
You mean shake the bees out or put them in, well, you got to sort through the frames and see what frames you want to keep too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You take your losses in the fall. So we're going to be going into winter, of course. And so this is really critical for you to begin your thinking about how you're going to manage your colonies to get them through the winter. And of course, I'm an advocate of insulation. I think you might know that. And I think the most important insulation is the insulation we put on the top of colonies. And so that's something I think we should really make an effort to figure out. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to do that on the 18th.
So I took several year hiatus from beekeeping and getting back, and I'm planning on using food grade plastic frames this time round. But
All
when it came
plastic?
in, I'm sorry?
All plastic?
Yeah, they're all plastic I'm getting them through Better Bee, but it's a molded plastic frame, and even the, where we would normally have the sheet of wax, that's plastic also. But from the molding process, there are a lot of nooks and crannies in those frames. And I'm just concerned about small hive beetle being able to find places to hide where the bees can't get to them. And I was curious if anyone had any experience in that realm.
Yeah, so that's been a criticism of those frames, is that there's a place where small hive beetles can, how many are you gonna start off with?
Uh, two hives.
All right, so you're gonna have, probably, you're gonna need 40 frames.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the plastic, are they black or white plastic?
Black.
All right, so you see that there's a little, right below the top bar, on each side of that, there's a little slit in there.
Yeah.
That's where the small hive beetles have a chance to lay.
Yeah, I said, wow, if I was a small hive beetle, that is
This
where
is where I would, this is where I would go, right in there, right? So first of all, I'm gonna recommend that you do two things. First of all, you gotta paint some liquid wax on those frames. All right, so get a source for wax and then paint it on.
Yeah, I'm lazy. I bought them pre-painted with
I
wax.
know, but it's not enough.
Oh, okay. All right.
What they do, yeah, what they don't do enough. They don't have enough on there for you for it to be, you gotta put some more on. And that will help them stay in the right comb making mind. Otherwise, with black plastic and some of the other plastics too, they can come and you can get, some crazy comb drawn. All right.
Okay.
And while you're at it, you can fill those spaces with wax.
Okay.
Now, what you do is, this is a pipette. See it? Right
Yep.
there.
Mm-hmm.
So believe it or not, with liquid wax, you can go in with this pipette when it's melted and just squeeze it, and you can draw up almost a full tube of wax in here.
Wow.
Then you can just precisely put it right in that crack. And it'll harden. Then you put it back in the liquid wax and it melts again. So you can use this over and over and over again. You just don't want to get it up into the bulb, the wax, because then you won't be able to get any pressure. But
Okay.
you'll learn how to use this, and they're real fun. These are totally inexpensive, and they can dispense wax in places where, you might want to put it to stop that kind of thing from happening. And you can
Okay.
fill them up to the point where your small hive beetles won't be able to hide in them.
Yeah, I just wanted to share on September 28th, I did have some robbing. I guess you'd call maybe it's like mild robbing. I don't know, but I
I
wanted
don't think there's such a thing, but go ahead.
well, I guess what I mean is they were trying to get into every crack on all sides of the hive. They were just trying to get right into the entrance.
All right.
And you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, I can. They're fighting. Yeah, that's that's a bee that doesn't belong in that colony.
Yes. So what happened was it was about 9 a.m. and usually my bees are kind of quiet. It was also cloudy. So usually they're not that active, but I saw on all three colonies, there was a lot of activity near the entrance.
Yeah.
So I thought it was pretty interesting.
Oh, that's a minor. Oh, that's yeah. Oh, that you're an amateur in the robbing category.
No, I had a really, really bad one time where they were like bouncing off my windows and all over the driveway. My daughter was afraid to go outside.
So do you have these down to like the 1-inch slot or something?
Yeah, it's the
Small
well,
opening?
the in-between one. It's not the tiny one, but it was the in-between one.
Yeah, but they're successfully being able to ward off robbers in that colony. There's no way that colony is going to get robbed right now at this stage. See what
Yeah, so one of my colonies, the queen had died, and I think maybe
they go after that colony right
yeah,
away.
that one got cleaned out by it
Yeah.
because I was doing an Apogard treatment on this one here, this first one.
Yeah.
And then I realized when I did an inspection that they were pretty much totally gone.
Yeah.
But the other two seemed to manage to fight them off, and then I put the screens on.
Yeah. And so you brought up a good point, and something that I've experienced over the years, especially during this season. If you have a queenless colony, it's the first victim to get robbed. They sense somehow or another, they sense that colony is vulnerable. Now you have a Be Smart robbing screen on there. Did that work?
Well, this is the one that died, so it worked, but there
Was
wasn't
dead.
that many bees left. The other two I made were homemade, and they seem to be working fine. I still have them on.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, okay. That's a real light robbing scenario. I wish we all had that.
So one of my colonies has two deeps, and
Yeah.
when I had the super on it, I thought they were both pretty full. I just checked a week or so ago. The bottom deep is all but empty, and the top has plenty, has some, brood, has honey. The super on top has honey. What happened? And what should I do?
So now what is this hive like now currently again?
It's pretty well, so it has a bottom deep that has maybe one frame of honey and no brood. Everything else is pretty much empty. And
Mhm.
then a second deep that has lots of honey, has, brood. And then it has a super that I'm afraid to take off because maybe they need it over the winter.
Yeah,
And that has honey in it.
okay. So
I'm just,
you got brood, you got an empty bottom deep.
yeah. Will they, if I take that super off, will they go back and fill down? I always thought they
No,
filled
they won't
up.
they won't do anything like that. So you can leave it in that configuration if you want. That's normally springtime situation that we run into. The bees are all out of the bottom super and
Yep.
they're in the top super. So in this case, it sounds like they put up their winter stores in the super and they're counting on those for the winter.
Right. Okay, so
You got
don't take that.
Or if you take it, then you're gonna have to feed like crazy and you don't have a lot of time to feed
Right.
before it gets too
When should
cold.
I stop feeding 2 to 1?
Well, when they stop taking it.
Okay.
But
There's not like a point where it's too
no,
late and you're going to increase the moisture content in
no,
the.
don't worry about that.
Okay.
That's just folklore. So
Okay. All right.
so what you want to do is make sure you have an insulated top over that feeder. And what
Okay.
that'll do is that'll extend the amount of time that they can use it because the hive gases are normally going to go up. And then what they'll do is they'll accumulate and warm up the syrup and that
Yep.
box. So the bees will have an opportunity to go up there. And
Okay.
we still have days in the 50s and 60s. So bees will,
Right. Yeah.
they're not going to be clustered all day. And if there's syrup above them and it's warm enough for them to get it, they will. Top feeders will work. Then if you still have to feed later on, you can put in a division board feeder in that, and and bees will break cluster and likely use that, but
Okay.
just go to top feeder for that. But that empty box down on the bottom, you can leave it there or take it out.
So you wouldn't put that on top and have them try and fill that?
No,
Okay.
they've already made their colony the way they want it.
Okay. All right.
If we were really lucky, if you were really lucky and you were and your bees wanted to cooperate with you in terms of the way that we think we know they should work, they
Yep.
would all be down in the bottom super, and that's where your brood would be. There would be a lot of honey the brood box would be full on the bottom with what you're seeing on the second deep. And then
Okay.
the deep above that would be filled with honey. And then above
Okay.
that, you could even have a super filled with honey, but that's not what your bees did.
Right. Okay. So take it off or leave it on. Definitely feed. Do I have to leave the super on or maybe pull it and save it? And if they don't have very much or just
They
leave
don't
it
have,
on?
unless you got in there and looked at that deep and said, hey, there's 5 frames of honey in here.
The top deep has several, yes.
And where's the brood then?
It's a 10 and they have probably 4 full frames.
So they've got a lot of honey stored in that top box.
Yeah, so leave it.
And they have the super. Well, that's the colony right there. You got a single deep colony. What we winter with on singles is usually a medium of honey.
Okay. All right.
You could try to super it with, you could try to winter it with nothing except one single deep, but that would be a little risky.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
but yeah, you're not counting on using that. You don't count on wanting that honey, right?
No, no. I've
Okay.
yet to get a honey harvest. Okay. All right.
Buy honey from a
Thank you, Bill.
local, buy honey from a local beekeeper. All right, Helen, what do you
Thank
got?
you.
Hi, Bill. Thank
Hi,
you. I just heard you say something about overwintering a single deep, and that's what I'm asking about. I have a small colony that requeens late in the season. So it's a really good queen. She's laying now. I'm actually still seeing eggs and larvae, and I have capped brood. So I want to overwinter it. I've never overwintered a single deep. So there are about 4 frames of honey, and there is my frame feeder in there. So that's taking up a space. But when I open it up, there are like, it's almost covered on the top with bees. So I would say like 8 seams of bees if I were to look down. So there are a lot of bees in there.
And brood?
And brood, yeah. So I would like to try for the first time overwintering in a single deep. And I wondered if I should do it by itself, or I also have a double screen board. And I was thinking I could try to put it over another one of my colonies, and I've heard you can do it that way. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could try to I don't know if it's got enough honey.
Oh, okay. And I don't have any supers anymore that are filled. So
Yeah. So, so the question you're faced with is, do you have enough honey to overwinter in a single? And the only way that I could say you have a chance to do that with what you're describing, because you said you was like 4 frames of honey in there.
yeah, there's as of the other day, there's 4 frames of honey. I am
So that would be
feeding.
7 times 4. So you say you have 28 pounds of honey in there.
Okay. Okay.
And then you said the rest of it's pretty packed with bees.
Yes. Yep.
All right, so you're right on the cusp of what they would need just for metabolic purposes to overwinter. All right, so you might want to try, if you want to try this,
Yep.
is insulate that colony in a really significant way around the sides and top, and make a nice seal of insulation all over it.
Is it too late for me to, so I have drawn comb, like I could put an empty honey super, or I could put a deep on top, or is it too late?
No,
It's
it's
all
not too
drawn
late.
out.
It's
It's
not a
too
deep,
late.
but if you
Okay.
put an empty super up there that you want to sacrifice, and then you put a top feeder on and try to get 3 or 4 gallons of syrup in that,
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
was wondering.
you might
Okay.
be able to do that.
Okay, maybe I'll try that and just see if
See what
because
they
they're
do with
still taking it. And
Yeah.
then my other thought was my frame feeder's taking up a space. I
Yeah,
mean, I've got a couple of colonies that have a lot of honey, and maybe I could take.
Yes, absolutely. So take that frame feeder. It's a single division board feeder.
Yes. Yes.
Take that out of there. You don't need that in there now. And then put
Okay.
a frame of honey in there, and you've already given them a ton of honey that they would have to make, and they'd never make that out of the frame feeder right now. So to take that out of there, give them a frame of honey is always best. Thank you all for coming. Thanks, Paul, for letting folks in.
Sure.
My pleasure.
Okay.
I like to open doors
Okay.
or windows.
October 18th will be at the Bee Yard.
Wait. 18th?
Right? Is it the 18th?
I think it's the 19th.
19th. October 19th, we'll be at the Bee Yard for our final session. You know that. So, all right. So thanks again, and we will see you soon. Bye now.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.